I haven't made a Danganronpa video in a while. Let's change that. So a few months ago, I made a video on Korekiyo Shinguji, which juiced, and ever since that video came out, the most popular video request I got was on the topic of Mikan Tsumiki, which I really did not understand. I guess she's also a Chapter 3 killer, which makes the connections between her and Korekiyo pretty strong, but personally, I really didn't care about Mikan, as to me she was just a fanservice character. Most of the time she was on screen, I let out a groan, as her appearances could lead to some softcore hentai. Now, don't get me wrong, I am very well aware that other characters have also been shown in some very suggestive scenes, but most of the time it's with side content that really isn't important to the main story. However, with Mikan, it always happens in a moment that's more or less relevant to the plot, which makes it all the more intrusive. And I'm also not saying that Danganronpa can't have any adult themes or perversion. I mean, one of my favorite characters from the series is Kazuichi Soda, a guy known for being a degenerate loser. I do get the whole thing of feeling bad for her and wanting to help her out because she's had such an unfortunate life. But if you pair my relatively low EQ for fictional characters with a character that seems to be fully one-dimensional at first glance, then yeah, I do see why I couldn't care less about making this video. All of this to say that today I felt like challenging myself. I wanted to make a video on a topic I wasn't too familiar with, as this way I would hopefully be less biased. Also, I really just want to get finished with this topic because I've been putting it off for so long. The second and less important reason is that I wanted to understand why when I look at Danganronpa 2's Steam page, I see that Mikan is the third most popular character when it comes to completion of free time events. And while yes, I'm aware I could just look at a Reddit post and read out all the comments, I really want to form my own opinions instead of just absorbing someone else's. So, yeah. Hope you enjoy. Because this is Danganronpa, a series with a very convenient way of finding out about your favorite characters without it being too overbearing on the actual plot, let's look at Mikan's free time events. Introductions are important when it comes to meeting new people. Most of the time, a first impression is what you're going to remember when you think of someone, and for Mikan, yeah, her introduction definitely works at showing you some of what she's dealing with. Sure, as of right now, there isn't an explanation for why she lacks these social skills, but right now she seems like an incredibly timid girl who suffers from an extreme lack of confidence. She stutters, apologizes all the time. You really understand right off the bat that she's not in a position of power. Hajime is, which kind of sets her apart from the rest of the characters, as while most of them see you as an equal or a friend, some even looking down on you, Mikan is very clearly weaker than you, which is pointed out by Nagito, who accuses the player of bullying this poor, scared girl. So Mikan is quickly established to be someone who has some deep-seated issues, whether it be from growing up in the wrong place or something else. And at this point, the player can determine whether or not they want to spend more time with her to find out more about her actual backstory. This is why the introductions, among other factors, are so important, as if you can just guess what makes a character the way they are right off the bat, there isn't much need to go spend time with them. And that's basically what I thought with Mikan. I just believe she suffered abuse from some people close to her growing up and became a nurse probably because she looked up to someone who helped her in the past. And looking back on it, I feel kind of stupid. During the first actual free time event, the two classmates are more or less as unfamiliar with each other, and because Mikan fears that Hajime might already hate her, she offers him various services, ranging from money to actual nudity. Hajime rightfully starts panicking and objects to this, which prompts Mikan to start crying because she fears that she might have done something wrong, which may or may not be a clue hinting at her crippling social anxiety. The conversation was about to get back on track until it turned stale, which once again prompts Mikan to offer stripping naked. Hajime rightfully refuses and turns the conversation around to a topic that might actually interest Mikan a little more. This topic being her favorite bandage types. Something that Mikan is obviously familiar with, as she has some on her arms and legs, and has probably used on others, being the ultimate nurse. She then happily goes off on a small passionate tangent about bandages, which reassures Hajime as she's showing confidence and willingness to connect with others through better means than the services that she offered earlier. She stops though, as she fears that she might have gone on for too long, but is reassured by Hajime, who commends her again for being so open about bandages. She reveals that she wants to see him again, as this is the first time in a while that she's actually been able to have a normal conversation with someone, so the two happily part ways. There are a few things to point out here, such as Hajime's tolerance and empathy, as instead of trying to run away or actually panicking, he manages to keep it cool in order to connect with a classmate. Also, something I enjoyed about Mikan was that as the FTEs went on, you notice a change in her speech patterns. She starts off meek and stuttering all the time, but as you get closer, she becomes more confident around Hajime, which makes her feel a bit more like a real human being, as even if she is confident with the player, she doesn't change much around everyone else, as she hasn't gotten close to them and doesn't know if she can trust them yet. Free Time Event 2 is where the tragedy starts, as she openly reveals that she was a victim of abuse in many ways. She was forced to eat bugs, get drawn on others, used as a dartboard, forced to read the comments on r/am I the asshole, just horrible shit that no one should ever have to go through. Hajime then feels deeply concerned by all this and asks why she looks so happy when talking about it, to which he responds with something along the lines of, "I genuinely hate it, but if it makes people not hate me, then it's for the best." Hajime is visibly confused by this, and after noticing it, Mikan offers him to let him doodle on her and pretend to be a pig, as she's more or less used to being abused in horrible ways by others because she needs to be forgiven. This normalization of abuse by Mikan makes Hajime even more concerned and uncomfortable, so he more or less leaves the conversation before any irreversible damage can be done. He regrets it, as this is where the red flags in her character start to show the most. After this free time event, we can understand that yeah, she did not grow up around the right people. She has taken so much abuse from others that to her it seems normal to go through some sadistic experiences in order to be forgiven for things that she really shouldn't be held accountable for. While yes, the topic is heavy, it's still just a game at the end of the day, and I think that's where some of Mikan's appeal comes from. I believe that when people enjoy Mikan's character, it's because they want to be there for someone who has gone through all the shit that she has. We're all aware that cases of abuse and other crimes are very real, and that too many people have to go through with it every single year. So to have a character who is forced into this, a character who can potentially get help from the player character, is a good thing for players, as they're able to provide assistance for someone who really needs it. Moral of the story is, being the one to help a character who suffers all the time equals the good feeling for player. Free Time Event 3 is probably my favorite, as it reveals the most about Mikan's talent and why she chose to become a nurse. Also, it adds a bit more depth to a character, which I really enjoy. In this free time event, she notices Hajime isn't feeling too well almost immediately and offers him some help, reversing the roles previously established from the other free time events, which reassures Hajime as she is definitely more confident around him now. She can now start conversations and keep them going without offering her body anymore, which is a neat development for the free time events. She then reveals that the reason she's such a good nurse is that she was frequently beat and had to treat her own wounds, showing that yeah, she has a lot of resolve even if she doesn't display it openly. Hajime tries to compliment her by telling her that she's basically kind-hearted for trying to help him, and this is where we find out another side to the previously meek Mikan Tsumiki, as she reveals that she loves treating the sick because they're weaker than her, which is a great reveal as it makes you put everything into question when it comes to Mikan's motivations. She goes on and admits that she likes them as they rely on her, unlike everyone else around her growing up. When she treats sick people, they have to listen to her or they'll die, which gives her a sense of belonging like nothing else. This also links back to my previous point about wanting to help Mikan. Yes, almost no one is like this, but there are probably rare cases of doctors or therapists who apply for their jobs in order to feel a sense of need or to feel better about themselves. Even if they aren't completely honest about it, it's still a subliminal feeling that just doesn't go away. This is probably the moment that made me actually enjoy Mikan, as she actually had layers below the severely anxious nurse character. After revealing this truth though, she defaults back to offering her body, but when Hajime refuses, she instead offers to treat him if he ever gets sick, which is probably not a good sign as she previously stated her opinions on sick people. This event also makes for decent foreshadowing for her final free time event as we learn more about what motivates her in life. Free time event 4 starts off awkwardly as Hajime can't really start up a conversation with Mikan. This is probably something she notices as she comments on it, showing that yeah, you can't hide much from her when it comes to facial expression. She then starts self-loathing, which makes Hajime comfort her in a pretty cool scene as he reveals that he enjoys talking to Mikan, which gives her enough of a confidence boost to talk about how this murder-filled field trip is probably the most fun she's had in her life. She feels like everyone needs her as she is probably one of the most useful students if they ever need an autopsy or have any health-related problems. She's also visibly elated when sharing that for the first time in her life she's not being tortured in even more violent ways, just hammering the fact that yes, Mikan has had a shitty life before coming to Hope's Peak Academy. Once again, she asks Hajime not to hate her as she feels like she's oversharing, and Hajime is once again there to comfort her, truly wanting to help Mikan as he doesn't believe she deserved to go through all the stuff she's endured. And this is true, she's been a victim of abuse her entire life, being forced to believe that she was the one to blame, leading for her being docile and easy target for bullying, etc. It's not her fault that she was born into these conditions, so the player just feels worse for her. If you thought this was tragic though, brace yourself for the final free time event, as this is probably the free time event that sticks the most with a lot of people, because it's revealed that what Mikan wants is for other people to be interested in her. During these interactions with Hajime, she always offered these out-of-pocket things to him because she didn't want to feel like she was stuck in the background. She's been used to having such a shitty life that she believes that being abused is better than being neglected. So when for the first time she isn't subjected to all this abuse on Jabberwock Island, she thinks that something is wrong. She doesn't see herself as an equal to all the other ultimates, even less than Hajime, so for her to be treated as one instead of being treated like filth is normal to her. She's flabbergasted at the idea of others seeing her as a friend, but accepts it, which might bring some change to her character little by little. I know this is heavily exaggerated, but at some point everyone has wanted to feel larger than life. It's only human. So for a character to always have that motivation, paired with other problem, makes for the perfect sympathetic ally, as you want to be there for her. If you have any shred of empathy, you would probably understand where she's coming from, and you would probably enjoy the character a lot more. Playing through these free time events has greatly changed my perspective on Mikan, not only as a character but also on certain things she does, and during the main story, as with context, more actions seem completely in character and justified. The need to be seen, and not neglected at least, is something that is present within all teenagers or high schoolers. And for a character like Mikan to have this motivation, this great insecurity, just feels so much more real. Which shows that yes, there's actually something behind all the sexualization and fan service. This is more or less a transition between the free time events and the actual story, as I don't really know where to add this moment in the video, as it's not really a part of the game, but it's also very important to Mikan's character. In the anime, Mikan is the first student from Class 77 of Host Week Academy to be brainwashed into an ultimate despair through some of the most questionable technology ever, but the logistics of Ryota's talents are relevant, so we move on. I think this is an important idea that Mikan was the first to fall to despair, as she's probably the most vulnerable in Class 77. Yes, she went to visit him of her own accord, which displays her more caring and selfless nature, but it's really easy for her to be manipulated and captured by Junko and Meguro, who make her the very first spy in the class. This whole brainwashing thing probably wouldn't have been as powerful if it was done with another character, as most of them tend to be better at hiding their insecurities and vulnerabilities. So it makes sense for Mikan, someone who seeks approval from others, to be so easily manipulated by Junko, just once again showing that yeah, this is a very in-character moment for Mikan, as out of everyone besides maybe Ryota, she would probably be the first person to break under pressure from others. So while the anime overall is a mess, the few moments that tie back to the games and flesh out the characters are great, and I wish we got to see how each individual student after Mikan got brainwashed, as a class mind wipe was kind of anticlimactic. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Now I can move on to the actual moments from the main story that flesh out Mikan's character a little more. Mikan in the first chapter is probably one of the most useful in a few ways. For the most part, she stays in the background, however when the blackout occurs at the party, she trips and falls into one of the sketchiest positions in the series. This position being the spread eagle, and the first in a series of very fanservice-y moments. Now, this is one of the cases of sexualization and fanservice for this character, and to be honest, I don't know how I feel about it. On one hand, yeah, it's objectifying the character, reducing her to which is very questionable when you realize that because this whole game uses avatars modeled after 15 to 16-year-olds, Mikan is a minor in this game. You could cope by saying that she's actually an adult in real life, but honestly, that doesn't really work because it's just Discord kitten all over again. On the other hand, this may or may not just be something in character for Mikan, which doesn't sound completely logical for her, but when you realize that Mikan desperately needs for someone to show interest in her, the constant weird sexualization makes sense. There are probably many better ways to present this idea, but at least in Mikan's case, it does have a little bit of plot relevance. That doesn't mean I enjoy or support it, because at the end of the day, softcore porn is still softcore porn, with a minor no less. This pose is then used as evidence as Teru, the resident pervert, should remember this very intricate position that Mikan was in after the lights went out, and surely enough, for a pervert to not remember something as sexually charged as this, he must be lying about the alibi he's trying to provide, which damns him to a cruel execution at the hands of the largest air fryer known to man. And look, the scene is fan service, there's no getting around it. However, I have to commend the Danganronpa writers for actually making the scene useful instead of just being there for degenerate purposes, even if it is still somewhat degenerate, all things considered. Speaking of useful, Mikan is also one of the most useful characters when it comes to class trial. She provides a correct autopsy for every murder, except for when she doesn't, and is seen as one of the biggest assets the class has to finding the killer, except for when she isn't. Take Trial 1, a case that manages to showcase the talents of a lot of individual students in creative ways. Ibuki can hear incredibly well, so she remembers everything that was said in the dark. Mahiru took photos at the right place to make for a decent map that was later used as evidence. Mikan is no different, as she's the one who saved the class from wrongly voting for Nagito, as she knows that a knife couldn't have caused the wounds found on Byakuya's body. Her talent as the ultimate nurse is probably one of the best in the killing game, as her experience with helping in the treatment of others gives her experience analyzing causes of death, especially when the robotic teddy bear responsible for this killing also likes to do a little trolling. In Trial 2, she still is helpful, as she confirms that Mahiru was killed in a single blow and died instantly, ruling out some possibilities on how the murder could have played out, even if she does make observations about the drugs used on Hiroko a little too late, which prompts her to once again be yelled at, because I may have forgotten to mention this earlier, but Mikan gets verbally attacked many times in these trials, by Teru, Fuyuhiko, and Hiyoko mostly. She gets death threats, and yet she still holds on as it's for the greater good, proving that yes, she may be meek and get scared very easily, but she is a valuable ally when it comes to class trial. If that wasn't enough evidence of her selflessness, when Fuyuhiko, a guy who has done nothing but insult anyone who dared approach him on this island, almost dies from injury, the first one to help him is Mikan, highlighting her selflessness and want to care for others. Yes, we know that this is because she enjoys treating the sick for the self-satisfaction reasons, but she still tries her best to help the man who previously threatened to sell her to a whorehouse. Speaking of relationships with other characters, she seems to get sympathy from pretty much everyone on the island besides Hiyoko, who relentlessly torments her. A lot of it is verbal assault and backhanded comments made on her, so it's not a lot when compared to what she faces at home, but she's still mistreated and reacts by panicking and wailing a lot. Could she be slightly relieved that she's not being neglected? Maybe? That's not made clear at all, and there aren't any hints that lead to that idea, so who knows. Either way, she ends up being the Chapter 3 killer as she contracts the despair disease, a disease with symptoms so unclear that it only lasts a chapter. She contracts this illness by frequently taking care of the students already infected. The anime references this in a pretty neat way by making her lose her mind when she was supposed to be helping out her classmates, which is just a cool parallel and detail that I really wish the anime had more of. With the disease, she remembers everything from before the whole killing game, which reverts her to her ultimate despair self, which makes her kill both Hibuki and Hiyoko in one of the most chaotic and messy cases in the series. While I could make a long critique of the structure of this case, I want to instead focus on the wasted potential here. I've seen some videos that advocate for Hiyoko being a survivor instead of someone like Sonia, as Hiyoko realizing that she's kind of been a shitty person could give her a redemption arc, similar to Fuyuhiko's. While I completely agree with that, I also wish that we could have had a different motive for Mikan, which isn't just, ooh, I'm a necrophiliac who will kill in order to create despair, as it ruins any real development for Mikan as a character, and also misses out on an opportunity to flesh out the dynamic between Mikan and Hiyoko. Would have been interesting to see Mikan actually kill Hiyoko for something more realistic, as not only would it have shown a different side to Mikan, but it would also have made Hiyoko's death feel slightly more impactful, as need I remind you that this case was so bizarre that in the end we don't even know what Mikan used to kill Hiyoko. The only reason as to why there was a double murder is because Hiyoko was in the wrong place at the wrong time. As for the big reveal that this is the real Mikan, I can't lie and say that I dislike this moment, as it's really intense and creates an even bigger mystery. Making Mikan the killer also makes a strong example as to why you shouldn't trust anyone, as Mikan, the one providing all these autopsies, lies to these survivors if it means that it can save her own skin. To have this completely changed direction and role reversal is something that is so trademark Danganronpa that I can't help but love it. If it was with any character, say Sonia or something like that, yeah, it would have been terrifying, but it would have been less powerful, as during this entire chapter, Mikan was the one to help everyone. While yes, Hajime and Fuyuhiko offered to help out, the others were all in quarantine and Mikan did most of the work, just really showing you that no one can be trusted on Jabberwock Island. Sure, the presentation is really symbolized, but overall the tension it creates when you realize that anyone else could become like this is unmatched in any other entry in the series, which I guess is my own copium for this chapter, as in practically the next scene we get one of the worst executions in the series. Mikan is launched into space onto a giant arm with a close-up shot of her tits and her ass to sexualize her one last time. It's kind of cool that they use her dislike of oversized objects, but apart from that, there's not many positive things to say about this execution, so overall her part in the story leaves you with a very sour taste in your mouth. Let me reiterate, before making this video, I didn't care for Mikan at all, and didn't realize what made her so adored by many. And after doing some research and looking back on some scenes with her, I now realize that yeah, she is one of the most gut-wrenching yet realistic characters in the series. She has very rational fears of being neglected, even if most of her characteristics are exaggerated to the maximum. And I'm aware that the flaws in her writing are very apparent. Growing up, I was lucky enough to have a pretty stable childhood, which makes it slightly more hard for me to empathize with Mikan, as she's had the complete opposite of that. I think another part of the appeal when it comes to Mikan is the fact that people who have actually suffered from abuse tend to maybe see themselves a bit in her. Sure, the experiences are never the same, and they're probably not as exaggerated as they are in the game, but at the end of the day, having some common experiences with other characters tend to form stronger bonds. And I'm not trying by any means to say that if you haven't suffered abuse, you're not allowed to like Mikan, because that's completely false. I'm just pointing out that having some shared experiences with certain characters can make you gravitate towards these characters. And that's the beauty of the Danganronpa series. Every character in this cast is so varied that you have this one character and you're like, this person is literally me. They're just like me, for real. All of this to say that I have come to like Mikan's character a little more after trying to do research on her, and yeah, good character. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe for more life-changing content, and goodbye.
Mikan Tsumiki.
In real life.